The morning sun cast long shadows across the busy marketplace of the royal city. Merchants called out their prices, children laughed and played between the stalls, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Among the crowd, a young girl named Emma moved carefully with her walking stick, tapping it gently on the cobblestones to find her way. She was only 17 years old, with long dark hair that fell past her shoulders and a face that would have been beautiful, if not marked by the sadness in her unseeing eyes. Emma had been blind since birth. Her parents had died when she was just 10 years old, leaving her in the care of her uncle Marcus and his wife Helen. At first, they seemed kind enough, taking her into their home and promising to care for her. But as years passed, their true nature revealed itself. They saw Emma not as family, but as a burden, and worse, as an opportunity to make money without working for it themselves. Every day, Marcus would force Emma out into the streets to beg. He gave her torn, dirty clothes to wear and made sure she looked as pitiful as possible. He believed people would give more money to someone who looked desperate and helpless. Emma hated it. She hated standing on street corners with her hand out, hated hearing the pity in people's voices, and hated that she had no choice in the matter. If she came home without enough coins, Marcus would shout at her, sometimes not giving her dinner as punishment. On this particular morning, Emma stood near the fountain in the town square. The water splashed behind her, and she could hear coins clinking as people tossed them in to make wishes. She wondered what it would be like to have wishes come true. Her own wish was simple, but seemed impossible. She wanted to be free, to learn something useful, to be more than just a beggar on the street. But how could a blind girl with no family and no money ever hope for such things? Across the square, Captain Adrian of the Royal Guard was making his rounds. He was a tall man in his early 30s, with kind brown eyes and a strong sense of justice that had earned him respect throughout the kingdom. He wore the dark blue uniform of the Royal Guards, with silver buttons that gleamed in the sunlight. Adrian took his duty seriously, not just to protect the royal family, but to watch over all the people in the city. As Adrian walked through the marketplace, something caught his attention. He noticed Emma standing by the fountain, her thin frame shivering slightly in the morning breeze. But what really made him stop was what he saw happening nearby. A rough-looking man was watching Emma from behind a fruit cart. The man kept glancing around nervously. Adrian's trained eye recognized the behavior of someone planning something bad. Adrian moved closer, pretending to examine some items at a nearby stall, but keeping his eyes on the suspicious man. Then he saw two more men positioning themselves on either side of Emma. They were working together, he realized. This was planned. The marketplace was crowded today. These criminals clearly thought they could snatch at the blind girl in the confusion and disappear before anyone noticed. Emma felt uneasy. She had learned to rely on her other senses, and right now, those senses were telling her something was wrong. She heard footsteps approaching from different directions, moving in a way that felt threatening. Her heart began to beat faster, and her fingers tightened around her walking stick. Suddenly, rough hands grabbed her arms from both sides. Emma screamed, but the noise of the marketplace swallowed her cry. The men started to drag her away, moving quickly toward a narrow alley between two buildings. Emma struggled, trying to pull free, but she was no match for their strength. Terror filled her heart as she realized what was happening. She was being kidnapped in broad daylight, and no one seemed to notice or care. But someone had noticed. Adrian was already moving, pushing through the crowd with quick, purposeful steps. He saw the third man following behind, clearly the lookout for the group. In seconds, Adrian assessed the situation and knew he had to act fast. The moment they got Emma into that alley, she would disappear, probably sold to someone terrible or held for ransom that no one would pay. Stop. Royal Guard. Adrian's voice rang out across the square with authority that made people freeze and turn. The two men holding Emma hesitated for just a second, and that was all Adrian needed. He reached them in 3 long strides, his hand going to the sword at his hip. The sight of a Royal Guard captain bearing down on them made the criminals panic. They released Emma and tried to run in different directions. Emma stumbled and nearly fell, confused and frightened, not understanding what was happening. Adrian caught her gently with one arm, while using his other hand to signal to 2 other guards. but heard his shout and were running to help. Within moments, all 3 criminals were captured and held firmly by the guards. Emma stood there shaking, her walking stick dropped on the ground, tears streaming down her face. She could hear men shouting, boots running on cobblestones, and the murmur of the crowd gathering around. Someone had tried to take her. Someone had actually grabbed her and tried to drag her away. The reality of how close she had come to something terrible made her legs feel weak. Adrian turned to her, his voice gentle and calm. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you." He picked up her walking stick and carefully placed it back in her hands. "My name is Captain Adrian of the Royal Guard. Can you tell me your name?" "Emma," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My name is Emma." "Emma, you're very brave," Adrian said. "Those men won't bother you or anyone else again. Can you tell me where you live? I'll make sure you get home safely." Emma's face showed conflict. Home was not a safe place for her either, but it was the only place she had. She gave him the address, a rundown building on the edge of the market district. Adrian frowned slightly. He knew that area, and it was not a good neighborhood. Questions began forming in his mind. Why was this young blind girl alone in the marketplace? Where was her family? Why did she dress in such poor clothes? As Adrian prepared to escort Emma home, he had no idea that this moment would change both their lives forever. Sometimes fate works in mysterious ways, bringing 2 people together at exactly the right time. Adrian walked slowly through the streets with Emma, matching his pace to hers as she carefully tapped her walking stick on the ground. He noticed how skilled she was at navigating despite her blindness, how she seemed to count her steps and recognize places by sound and smell. The other guards had taken the 3 criminals away to the royal prison, where they would face justice for attempted kidnapping as they walked. Adrian tried to make conversation, hoping to calm Emma's nerves after the frightening experience. "Have you lived in this city long?" he asked gently. Emma nodded. "All my life. I was born here. I know these streets well, even though I cannot see them." "That's remarkable," Adrian said with genuine admiration. "You move through the city with great confidence. Someone must have taught you well." Emma's expression became sad. "My mother taught me before she died. She always said that being blind didn't mean being helpless. She taught me to be strong and independent." Adrian noticed the pain in her voice when she mentioned her mother. "I'm sorry for your loss. Do you live with other family now?" "My uncle and aunt," Emma replied quietly. Her tone suggested this was not a happy arrangement, but she didn't elaborate. They reached the address Emma had given, a shabby building with peeling paint and a crooked door. Adrian felt his concern growing. This was not a proper home for a young girl. Before he could say anything, the door flew open, and a large red-faced man stormed out. "Where have you been?" Marcus shouted at Emma, his voice full of anger. "You've been gone for hours, and you come back with empty hands. How dare you waste the whole morning?" Emma flinched at his voice, shrinking back. "Uncle Marcus, I was silenced?" Marcus raised his hand as if to strike her, but froze when he noticed Adrian standing there in his Royal Guard uniform. His expression changed instantly from anger to fake friendliness. "Oh, Captain, I didn't see you there. Thank you for bringing my poor niece home. She tends to wander off sometimes, because of her ... condition." Adrian's eyes narrowed. Everything about this man set off alarm bells in his mind. The way Emma cowered from him, the anger in his voice before he noticed the guard. The fact that he was more concerned about empty hands than Emma's well-being. "Your niece was nearly kidnapped in the marketplace," Adrian said coldly. 3 men grabbed her and tried to drag her away. I stopped them. Marcus's eyes widened, but not with the concern a caring guardian would show. Adrian saw something else, their calculation. "Kidnapped? Oh my. Well, thank goodness you were there, Captain. Emma, get inside now. We'll discuss this later." "Actually," Adrian said firmly, stepping slightly in front of Emma, "I have some questions about why a young blind girl was alone in a crowded marketplace. Where were you while your niece was in danger?" Marcus's fake smile tightened. "I was working, of course. Someone has to earn money to feed this family. Emma is old enough to go out on her own. She knows the city well." Adrian looked at Emma's worn clothes, her thin frame, and suddenly understood. She was begging, wasn't she? You send her out to beg while you stay home? That's none of your business, Marcus snapped, his true nature showing again. She's my niece, and I'll handle family matters as I see fit. Now if you'll excuse us, it becomes my business when a citizen of this kingdom is in danger. Adrian interrupted, his voice carrying the full authority of his position. And it becomes my business when I suspect someone is being mistreated. Helen appeared in the doorway behind Marcus, a thin woman with hard eyes. Marcus, what's going on? Why is there a guard here? Nothing, dear, Marcus said through gritted teeth. Just a small incident in the market. Now, Captain, we're very grateful for your help, but really, we need to get on with our day. Adrian looked at Emma, who stood silently, her head bowed. He could see her trembling slightly. Every instinct told him this girl was not safe here, but he also knew he couldn't just take her away without proper cause. He needed proof of mistreatment, or at least more information. Very well, he said slowly. But I'll be checking in regularly to ensure Emma's safety. Those criminals will be questioned about why they targeted her specifically. If they were working with anyone else, we'll find out. The subtle threat in his words was clear. If Marcus had any involvement in the kidnapping attempt, perhaps planning to sell his niece, Adrian would discover it. Marcus's face went pale, but he said nothing. Adrian turned to Emma and spoke gently. Emma, if you ever need help, come to the Royal Guard Station. Ask for Captain Adrian. Do you understand? You don't have to face troubles alone. Emma lifted her head slightly, and though she couldn't see him, she turned toward his voice. Thank you, Captain, she whispered. For saving me today? It was my honor, Adrian replied. He gave Marcus and Helen a long, hard look before turning and walking away. But he didn't go far. Around the corner, he stopped and thought about what he had seen. Something was very wrong in that household, and he intended to find out exactly what. Over the next few days, Adrian made it his mission to learn more about Emma. He asked questions around the neighborhood and discovered disturbing information. Neighbors told him that Marcus and Helen never worked, living off whatever Emma brought home from begging. They said they often heard shouting from the house, and that Emma was sometimes sent out without proper food or warm clothes. Even in bad weather, an old woman who ran a vegetable stand near the square told Adrian something that made his blood boil. That poor child, she said sadly. I've seen her uncle grab the money right from her hands the moment she comes near home. He counts every coin and gets angry if there isn't enough. Sometimes he sends her back out, even after dark. It's not right, treating family that way. Adrian also questioned the 3 criminals who had tried to kidnap Emma. Under pressure, one of them finally talked. They had been watching Emma for weeks, noticing that she was always alone and unprotected. They planned to sell her to a workhouse in another city, where blind people were forced to do simple, repetitive tasks for no pay. It was a cruel fate, and they had chosen Emma because they thought no one would care enough to look for her. This information confirmed Adrian's worst fears. Emma was vulnerable, unprotected, and trapped with relatives who saw her only as a source of income. He knew he had to do something, but he also had to be careful. He couldn't just accuse Marcus and Helen without solid proof of abuse. He needed a plan, and he needed to talk to people who could help him understand the legal ways to protect Emma. That evening, Adrian visited his friend Thomas, who worked as a clerk in the royal courts. He explained the situation and asked about laws regarding guardianship and protection of vulnerable citizens. Thomas listened carefully and then pulled out several large books of kingdom law. They spent hours reading and discussing possibilities. Finally, Thomas found something useful. According to this law, if a guardian is proven to be negligent or abusive, the royal court can remove the person from their care. But you need evidence, Adrian. Suspicions aren't enough. You need witnesses willing to testify or proof of direct harm. Adrian nodded slowly. I'll get the evidence. That girl deserves better than what she has. She deserves a real chance at life. 3 weeks passed after the attempted kidnapping. During that time, Adrian made it a point to patrol the marketplace frequently, always keeping an eye out for Emma. He saw her almost every day, standing in the same spot by the fountain, holding out her hand to passers-by. Each time he saw her, his heart ached. She looked thinner than before, and her clothes seemed even more ragged. Adrian began talking to Emma whenever he could. Brief conversations that seemed casual, but were actually his way of building trust and gathering information. At first, Emma was nervous and quiet, giving short answers to his questions. But gradually, she began to relax around him. There was something about Adrian's gentle voice and genuine concern that made her feel safe. One afternoon, Adrian brought Emma a warm meat pie from a vendor. "You should eat something," he said kindly. "You've been standing here since morning." Emma hesitated. "I can't. Uncle Marcus counts the money when I get home. If I spend any, he'll be angry." "I'm buying it for you," Adrian said firmly. "It's a gift. He can't be angry about that." Emma accepted the pie with trembling hands and ate it quickly, as if afraid someone might take it away. Adrian watched her with growing anger at Marcus and Helen. This girl was clearly being starved, worked all day, and treated with no compassion at all. "Emma," Adrian said gently, "how long have you lived with your uncle?" 7 years, Emma replied softly. "Since my parents died in a fire, I had nowhere else to go." "And has he always sent you out to beg?" Emma was quiet for a moment, as if deciding whether to trust him with the truth. Finally, she nodded. "At first, Aunt Helen would come with me, but after a few months, they said I was old enough to go alone. They take all the money I collect. I'm not allowed to keep any of it, not even a single coin for myself." "What happens if you don't bring enough money home?" Adrian asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Emma's voice became even quieter. "Uncle Marcus gets very angry. Sometimes he doesn't let me eat dinner. Sometimes he locks me in my room for days. Once, when I got sick and couldn't go out for a week, he said I was useless and threatened to throw me out on the streets." Adrian felt fury building inside him, but he kept his voice calm and gentle. "That's not right, Emma. You know that, don't you? You're not useless. You're a brave, strong person who deserves to be treated with kindness and respect." Tears began rolling down Emma's cheeks. "But what can I do? I have no money, no skills, nowhere to go. Who would want a blind girl who can't do anything useful?" Adrian knelt down, so he was at her level. "You're wrong about that. You can do many things. You navigate this entire city on your own. You're intelligent and well-spoken. With proper training and education, you could do so much more. You could have a real life, Emma, not this half-life of misery." "Oh, that's impossible," Emma whispered. "People like me don't get chances like that." "What if I told you there might be a way?" Adrian said. "What if I could help you get away from your uncle and aunt?" Emma's expression showed a mixture of hope and fear. "How? They're my legal guardians. I have no say in where I live or what I do. There are laws to protect people from abuse and neglect," Adrian explained. "If I can prove that your uncle and aunt are mistreating you, the royal court can remove you from their care. But I need your help. I need you to be brave enough to tell the truth about what's been happening." Emma stood very still, processing this information. For years, she had accepted her situation as unchangeable, as simply the way her life had to be. The idea that it could be different was overwhelming. "What would happen to me if they're no longer my guardians? Where would I go?" "There are places that take care of people who have nowhere else to turn," Adrian said. "But I won't lie to you, Emma. I don't know exactly what would happen. What I do know is that your current situation is unacceptable, and if we do nothing, it will only get worse." Before Emma could respond, they heard angry shouting. Marcus was pushing through the crowd, his face red with rage. "Get away from my niece," he yelled at Adrian. "I've seen you talking to her day after day. What are you trying to do? Steal her away? She's my family, and you have no right to interfere." Adrian stood up, placing himself protectively between Marcus and Emma. "I have every right to ensure the safety of all citizens, and I have concerns about Emma's welfare." "Concerns?" Marcus laughed harshly. "I feed her, clothe her, give her a roof over her head. What more does a blind beggar need? She'd be dead in a gutter if not for me." "You send her out to work all day and take everything she earns," Adrian said coldly. "That's not care. That's exploitation." A crowd was gathering now, people stopping to watch the confrontation. Marcus looked around nervously, aware that people were listening. You don't understand our family situation. Emma needs to contribute to the household. We're poor people. Everyone must do their part. Then why don't you work? Adrian challenged. Why does a blind 17-year-old girl support two able-bodied adults? Marcus's face went even redder. How dare you? This is none of your business. Emma, come here right now. We're going home. Emma didn't move. For the first time in 7 years, she stood her ground. No, she said quietly. What did you say? Marcus's voice was dangerous. I said no, Emma repeated. Louder this time. Her hands were shaking, but her voice grew stronger. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of working all day and having nothing. I'm tired of being hungry and cold. Captain Adrian is right. What you and Aunt Helen do to me is wrong. Marcus moved toward her, reaching out to grab her arm, but Adrian blocked him. Don't touch her, the guard captain said firmly. Emma, you don't have to go with him if you don't want to. She's coming home with me. Marcus shouted. She's my niece, and she'll do as I say. Adrian raised his voice so the entire crowd could hear. Is anyone here willing to testify about how this man treats his niece? Has anyone witnessed abuse or neglect? There was a moment of silence. Then the old woman from the vegetable stand stepped forward. I'll testify, she said firmly. I've seen how he treats that poor girl. It's shameful. A baker raised his hand. I've seen him grab money from her hands and count it right there on the street, shouting at her when there wasn't enough. More people began speaking up, sharing what they had witnessed over the years. Marcus looked around in growing panic as he realized public opinion had turned against him. He had always relied on people looking the other way, minding their own business. But now, with a royal guard captain asking questions, and Emma finally standing up for herself, his control was slipping. This is ridiculous, Marcus sputtered. You're all believing the words of a blind beggar over a respectable citizen. I believe the evidence of my own eyes and the testimony of multiple witnesses, Adrian said. And I'm taking Emma into protective custody until this matter can be properly investigated by the royal court. If you have objections, you can present them to the magistrate. You can't do this, Marcus shouted. But he made no move to stop Adrian as the captain gently took Emma's arm and began leading her away from the square. Emma's heart pounded as Adrian led her away from the marketplace. She could still hear Marcus shouting threats behind them, but his voice grew fainter with each step. She couldn't quite believe what had just happened. For 7 years, she had lived in fear and misery, believing there was no escape. And now, in the span of a few minutes, everything had changed. Where are we going? Emma asked, her voice shaking. To a safe place, Adrian replied gently. There's a woman named Sister Margaret who runs a home for people who need help. She's kind and wise, and she'll take good care of you while we sort out the legal matters. They walked through the city streets, and Adrian described everything they passed so Emma could picture it in her mind. He told her about the colorful flowers in window boxes, the children playing with a ball in a courtyard, the fountain with carved dolphins that spouted water. Emma listened to every word, amazed at how beautiful he made the world sound. Most people who spoke to her either ignored her blindness completely or spoke too loudly, as if being blind meant she couldn't hear properly. They arrived at a large stone building with a garden in front. Adrian knocked on the wooden door, and it was opened by an elderly woman with silver hair and warm blue eyes. Captain Adrian, she exclaimed. What a pleasant surprise. And who is this young lady? Sister Margaret, this is Emma. She needs a safe place to stay for a while. May we come in? Of course, of course. Sister Margaret opened the door wider and ushered them inside. The building smelled like fresh bread and herbs. Emma could hear voices in the distance, people talking and laughing. It sounded warm and welcoming, so different from the cold silence of her uncle's house. Adrian explained the situation to Sister Margaret, who listened with growing concern and sympathy. When he finished, she took Emma's hands in her own. You poor child, she said softly. You've been through so much. But you're safe now. You'll stay here with us, and no one will hurt you or force you to do anything you don't want to do. Emma felt tears streaming down her face again, but this time they were tears of relief. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Sister Margaret showed Emma to a small but clean room with a comfortable bed, a table, and a chair. "This will be your room," she explained, guiding Emma's hands so she could feel where everything was. "There's a blanket on the bed, nice and warm. The window faces the garden, so you'll hear birds singing in the morning. We have meals 3 times a day in the dining hall, and everyone here helps with chores according to what they can do." Adrian stayed for a while longer, making sure Emma was settled and comfortable. Before he left, he spoke to her privately. "Tomorrow, I need to file an official complaint with the royal court about your uncle and aunt. I'll need you to tell your story to a magistrate. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, feeling braver than she had in years. "Yes. I want to tell the truth about what they did. I don't want them to hurt anyone else the way they hurt me." "You're very brave," Adrian said warmly. "I'll come by tomorrow morning to take you to the courthouse. Try to get some rest tonight." After Adrian left, Sister Margaret brought Emma a bowl of hot soup and fresh bread. Emma ate slowly, savoring every bite. The food was delicious, and there was plenty of it. She didn't have to worry about someone taking it away or being punished for eating too much. That night, lying in a real bed with clean sheets and a warm blanket, Emma couldn't sleep at first. Her mind was full of thoughts and emotions. Fear about what would happen next. Hope that maybe her life could actually get better. Gratitude toward Captain Adrian and Sister Margaret. And beneath it all, a growing sense of her own strength. She had stood up to Marcus. She had said no. She had told the truth in front of all those people. Maybe she wasn't as helpless as she'd always believed. The next morning, Sister Margaret helped Emma wash and gave her clean clothes to wear. They weren't fancy, just a simple dress and warm shawl, but they fit properly and were in good condition. Emma felt different wearing them, more like a real person instead of a beggar. Adrian arrived as promised and took Emma to the royal courthouse. It was a grand building with high ceilings and marble floors. Their footsteps echoed as they walked through the halls. Emma felt small and nervous, but Adrian stayed close beside her, his presence reassuring. They were shown into a large room where a magistrate sat behind an enormous desk. The magistrate was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Adrian introduced Emma and explained why they were there. "Young lady," the magistrate said to Emma, his voice formal but not unkind, "I need you to tell me in your own words about your life with your uncle and aunt. Take your time and tell me everything you remember." Emma took a deep breath and began to speak. At first, her voice was soft and hesitant, but as she talked, it grew stronger. She told about her parents' death, about moving in with Marcus and Helen, about how the kindness they showed at first quickly disappeared. She described being sent out to beg every day, having all her earnings taken, being denied food as punishment, being locked in her room, being threatened and shouted at. The magistrate listened carefully, occasionally asking questions to clarify details. A clerk sat nearby, writing down everything Emma said. When she finished, there was a long moment of silence. "Captain Adrian," the magistrate said, "you mentioned there were witnesses willing to testify." "Yes, Your Honor," Adrian replied. "Several merchants and neighbors who have observed the situation over the years." "Bring them in," the magistrate ordered. Over the next 2 hours, 5 people came forward to testify. The old woman from the vegetable stand, the baker, a cloth merchant, a woman who lived next door to Marcus and Helen, and a man who owned a tavern near their house. Each person told what they had seen and heard. The picture that emerged was clear and damning. Marcus and Helen had systematically exploited and abused Emma for years, treating her not as family but as property to be used for profit. When the testimonies were finished, the magistrate looked through his papers and then addressed the room. "Based on the evidence presented and the testimony of multiple witnesses, I am ruling that Marcus and Helen are unfit guardians. Their legal authority over Emma is hereby terminated. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into their activities. If evidence of further wrongdoing is found, they will face criminal charges." Emma felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was free. Truly free. Marcus and Helen had no power over her anymore. "Now," the magistrate continued, "we must address the question of Emma's future care. She is still young and will need guidance and support. Sister Margaret's home is suitable as a temporary arrangement, but we should consider longer-term solutions. Captain Adrian, as you brought this matter to the court's attention, do you have any thoughts on this? Adrian had been thinking about this question for days. Your Honor, I would like to propose something unusual. I am unmarried and live alone in a house that belonged to my late parents. It has several rooms and is well maintained. I would like to offer Emma a permanent home with me as her legal guardian. The entire room went silent. Emma gasped in surprise. This was the last thing she had expected. The magistrate studied Adrian with a thoughtful expression. That is indeed an unusual proposal, Captain. While I respect your intentions, there are certain considerations we must address. You are a single man, and Emma is a young woman. People will talk. There could be questions about propriety. Adrian had anticipated this concern. I understand, Your Honor. However, I have a solution to address those worries. My Aunt Catherine is a widow who currently lives alone. She has expressed willingness to move into the house as well, to serve as a chaperone and female companion for Emma. This arrangement would ensure everything is completely proper. I see, the magistrate said, nodding slowly. That does help address the concern. But tell me, Captain, why are you willing to take on such a responsibility? You barely know this girl. Adrian chose his words carefully. Your Honor, I have dedicated my life to protecting people and upholding justice. When I saved Emma from those kidnappers, I saw a young person who had been failed by the very people who should have protected her. Since then, I've gotten to know her, and I've seen her courage, her intelligence, and her determination to survive, despite impossible circumstances. She deserves a real chance at life. She deserves to be educated, to learn skills, to become independent. I have the means to provide that, and I believe it's my duty to help her. The magistrate turned to Emma. Young lady, what are your thoughts on this proposal? You should know that you have a say in this decision. If you're uncomfortable with this arrangement, we can find another solution. Emma's mind raced. Captain Adrian wanted to be her guardian, to give her a home, an education, a future. It seemed too good to be true. But she remembered his kindness, his patience, the way he had protected her and believed in her when no one else did. Captain Adrian saved my life, Emma said quietly. Not just from those men who tried to kidnap me, but from years of suffering with my uncle and aunt. He's been nothing but kind to me. He treats me like I matter, like I'm a real person with value. If he's willing to give me a home and help me build a life, then yes, I would be grateful and honored to accept. The magistrate thought for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. I will approve this arrangement on a probationary basis. Captain Adrian will become Emma's legal guardian, with his Aunt Catherine serving as co-guardian and chaperone. I will require regular reports on Emma's welfare and progress. This court will review the situation in 6 months to ensure the arrangement is working well for everyone involved. Adrian and Emma both agreed. The magistrate made it official with his seal and signature, and just like that, Emma's life changed completely. Adrian took Emma to collect her few belongings. Then they traveled to his home on the other side of the city. The house was 2 stories, made of red brick with white shutters, with a garden in the back where his mother used to grow herbs and flowers, Adrian's aunt. Catherine was already waiting to meet Emma. She was a woman in her 50s with a warm smile and gentle manner. She had been a teacher before her husband died and was excited about helping Emma learn and grow. Welcome, my dear, Catherine said, taking Emma's hands. Adrian has told me so much about you. I'm so glad you'll be staying with us. Come, let me show you your room. The room was on the 2nd floor facing the garden. Catherine guided Emma's hands over everything, helping her memorize where things were placed. There was a comfortable bed, a wardrobe for clothes, a desk by the window, and a bookshelf that Catherine planned to fill with books written in Braille. Braille? Emma asked, confused. What is that? It's a special system of writing for people who cannot see, Catherine explained excitedly. It uses raised dots that you can feel with your fingers. Each pattern of dots represents a different letter. With practice, you can read and write just like anyone else. Emma felt overwhelmed with emotion. No one had ever suggested that she could learn to read and write. "You really think I can learn?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. "I know you can," Catherine said firmly. "You're intelligent and capable, Emma. You just need someone to give you the tools and opportunity. And that's exactly what we're going to do." Over the following days, Emma began to adjust to her new life. She kept waiting for something bad to happen, kept expecting Adrian and Catherine to suddenly reveal their true nature. But as days turned into weeks, that fear slowly faded. They were genuinely kind. Catherine started teaching Emma Braille every morning. At first, it was frustrating. The tiny raised dots all felt the same to Emma's untrained fingers. But Catherine was patient and encouraging. Gradually, Emma's fingertips became more sensitive. She learned to distinguish the patterns, to recognize letters, and eventually to read simple words. Adrian would come home each evening and join them for dinner. He would tell stories about his day, always including Emma in the conversation and asking her opinion about things. He treated her like an equal, not like a burden or a charity case. About a month after Emma moved in, Catherine had a surprise. "Emma, I've arranged for you to have music lessons. A friend of mine teaches piano, and she's willing to work with you. Many blind musicians become quite accomplished. Would you like to try?" The piano teacher, Mrs. Blackwood, came to the house twice a week. She was patient and understood that Emma would need to learn differently from sighted students. Instead of reading sheet music, Emma would learn by ear and by feeling the position of her hands on the keys. To Emma's surprise and delight, she discovered she had a natural talent for music. As weeks turned into months, Emma flourished. She could now read and write in Braille with growing confidence. She could play several simple songs on the piano and was learning more complex pieces. Catherine taught her mathematics, geography, history, and science, with Emma absorbing knowledge like a sponge. But perhaps more important than all the academic learning was the emotional healing that happened during this time. Emma began to smile more, to laugh at jokes, to express opinions without fear. The thin, a frightened girl who had stood by the fountain, begging, was transforming into a confident young woman with hopes and dreams. One evening, about 4 months after Emma came to live with them, the three of them were sitting in the parlor after dinner. Emma was practicing a new song on the piano. When she finished, both Adrian and Catherine applauded. "That was beautiful, Emma," Adrian said warmly. "You've improved so much." Emma felt her cheeks grow warm with pleasure. "I love it," she said softly. "Music makes me feel free, like I can express things I don't have words for." "You have a gift?" Catherine added. "Mrs. Blackwood told me she's rarely seen a student progress so quickly. She thinks you could become a professional musician if you wanted to pursue it seriously." "Really?" Emma's voice was full of wonder. "A professional musician?" "Me. Why not?" Adrian said. "You have talent, dedication, and now you have the education and opportunity to develop your skills. Emma, your life can be whatever you want it to be." Emma sat quietly for a moment, taking in his words. 6 months ago, she had been a beggar with no hope, no future, no dreams. Now, she was learning to read, play music, and think about what she wanted to do with her life. "Captain Adrian," she said hesitantly, "why did you do all this for me? I'm nobody special. You could have just rescued me that day and forgotten about me." Adrian set down his newspaper and thought about his answer. "Do you remember what I told you that day in the marketplace? That you deserved to be treated with kindness and respect? I meant that, Emma. But there's more to it. When I look at you, I see someone who refused to give up even when life was unbearably hard. You survived 7 years of mistreatment and somehow kept your spirit intact. That takes incredible strength. You're not nobody. You're someone remarkable, and I'm honored to help you become everything you're capable of being." 2 years passed, and Emma's transformation was miraculous. She had become an accomplished pianist, playing at gatherings and church events. Her Braille reading was fluent, and she had consumed dozens of books on history, literature, and philosophy. Catherine had taught her daily living skills, all adapted for blindness. Emma had grown from a frightened, abused girl into a confident, educated young woman with dreams and ambitions. The magistrate's 6-month review had gone perfectly, making Adrian's guardianship permanent. The once quiet house now felt like a real home, filled with music, laughter, and warmth. As Emma approached her 20th birthday, Adrian noticed changes in his feelings. She was no longer the vulnerable child he had rescued, but a remarkable woman, intelligent, kind, talented, and beautiful. He found himself thinking about her during patrol duties. These feelings troubled him deeply. He was her guardian, her protector. It seemed wrong to think of her differently. Emma experienced her own confusion. Her gratitude toward Adrian had grown into something deeper. She loved hearing his footsteps when he came home, treasured their evening conversations, and her heart beat faster when he sat beside her at the piano. She suspected what she felt might be romantic love. One spring evening, Catherine announced she would visit her sister in a neighboring city for several days. After she left, the house felt different, more intimate with just the two of them. That evening, Adrian found Emma in the parlor playing a new piece. He stood listening. The music was hauntingly beautiful, full of emotion and longing. When she finished, he applauded softly. Emma turned toward his voice, smiling. "You're home. I didn't hear you come in. What did you think?" "It was beautiful, but also sad." "What inspired something so melancholy?" Adrian asked, sitting beside her on the piano bench. Emma's hands rested on the keys. "I've been thinking about my life, about how much has changed. Sometimes I feel confused about things." "What kind of things?" Adrian asked gently. Emma hesitated, then decided to be brave. "Captain Adrian, do you ever regret taking me in? I've changed everything for you. You gave up your privacy, your freedom." Adrian took her hand gently. "Emma, you haven't been a sacrifice. You've been a gift. Before you came, I was just going through the motions of living. I was lonely, though I didn't realize it until you changed everything. This house became a home again. You gave my life meaning and purpose. I have never regretted it for a single moment." Tears formed in Emma's eyes. "You've given me everything. You've treated me like I matter, like I'm worthy of good things. You saved my life in so many ways. You don't need to repay me. That's not how family works. We take care of each other because we love each other," Adrian said firmly. "Family, is that what we are?" Emma whispered. Adrian realized he still held her hand. "Yes, we're family. You, me, and Aunt Catherine." But even as he spoke, Adrian knew what he felt had become more than brotherly affection. He loved her as a man loves a woman. Emma seemed to sense his struggle. Her fingers tightened around his hand. "Captain Adrian, I need to tell you something. I've been trying to find the courage for weeks." Adrian's heart beat faster. "What is it, Emma?" Emma took a deep breath. "I love you. Not as a guardian or brother, but as more than that. I know it might be wrong or inappropriate, but I can't keep pretending. Every time I hear your voice, every time you're near me, my heart feels like it might burst. You're the kindest, most honorable man I've ever known. Somewhere along the way, gratitude turned into something deeper. I love you, Adrian." For a long moment, Adrian couldn't speak. "Emma, I love you too. I've been fighting these feelings for months, telling myself it was wrong. But you're the most remarkable person I've ever met. You're brave, intelligent, talented, and beautiful inside and out. I love you, not as a ward, but as a woman I want to spend my life with." Emma's face lit up with joy. "Really? You truly feel that way?" "With all my heart. But we need to be careful about how we proceed. People will talk. We need to do this properly, to give you time to be sure," Adrian said. "I understand. But Adrian, I am sure I've had 2 years to think about this. These feelings aren't born from dependency. They come from truly knowing you." Adrian smiled, feeling happier than he had in years. "Then here's what we'll do. We'll tell Aunt Catherine when she returns and ask for her blessing. We'll inform the magistrate so everything is proper and legal. We'll announce our engagement publicly and wait at least a year before we marry. Does that sound reasonable?" "It sounds perfect," Emma said, smiling through happy tears. Adrian gently pulled her into an embrace, and Emma rested her head on his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she felt completely safe, completely loved, completely at peace. When Catherine returned, they explained everything. She laughed warmly. "My dears, did you think I hadn't noticed? I've seen the way you look at each other. I've been expecting this conversation for months. You have my complete blessing. You're perfect for each other." They followed Adrian's plan exactly. He formally ended his legal guardianship before announcing their engagement. This ensured no one could claim the relationship was inappropriate. The announcement caused some gossip, but most people were genuinely happy. The engagement year passed quickly. Emma continued her music studies and began teaching piano to neighborhood children, discovering she had a gift for teaching. Adrian continued as captain of the Royal Guard, feeling lighter and happier than ever. On a beautiful summer day, exactly 1 year after their engagement, Adrian and Emma were married in a simple church ceremony. Sister Margaret attended with tears of joy. Mrs. Blackwood played the organ. Catherine stood beside Emma as a matron of honor. Emma wore a simple white dress with flowers in her hair. She felt Adrian's love in every word of his vows, in the gentle way he held her hand, in the emotion in his voice. After the ceremony, there was a garden celebration. As the sun set and guests left, Adrian and Emma stood together. Adrian described the sunset's oranges and pinks painting the sky. "I wish I could see it," Emma said softly. "See in ways more important than sight. You see the truth in people's hearts. You see beauty in music and poetry." "Your blindness has never limited you, Emma," Adrian replied. Emma smiled. "When I was young, I felt angry about being blind. But now, I wonder if things happened exactly as they were meant to. If I hadn't been blind, maybe those kidnappers wouldn't have targeted me. If they hadn't, you wouldn't have rescued me. We never would have met. And I wouldn't be standing here married to the most wonderful man in the world. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best parts of our story." Adrian agreed. After a comfortable silence, Emma spoke again. "Adrian, I've been thinking. There must be other people out there like I was, blind and poor, with no opportunities. What if we started a school? A place where blind children and adults could learn Braille, music, daily living skills. We could help them the way you and Catherine helped me." Adrian's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful. We could use the money from my parents' estate. Emma, you're brilliant. This could change so many lives. Could call it Second Chance School." "Because everyone deserves a second chance at happiness," Emma suggested. And so began the next chapter. Over the following years, Adrian and Emma established the school. It started small, but grew steadily. Catherine taught reading and general education. Emma taught music and daily living skills. They hired other specialized teachers. The school became known throughout the region, and eventually the kingdom. Parents brought their blind children to learn and thrive. Adults who had been begging on streets gained skills and dignity. The school didn't just teach practical abilities, but helped students believe in themselves. They had 3 children together. One daughter was born blind but grew up in a home where blindness was never seen as a limitation. She became a talented musician like her mother, and eventually took over running the school. Many years later, Adrian and Emma were old. They sat together in their garden. Emma had accomplished things she'd never imagined possible as that frightened girl by the fountain. She had become a teacher, a mother, a force for change in her community. "Do you ever think about that day? The day you saved me?" Emma asked Adrian. "Often. It was the day my real life began," Adrian replied. "Mine too," Emma said, taking his hand. "You showed me that one person's kindness can change everything. You didn't just save my life that day. You gave me a life worth living." Their story became legend in the city, passed down through generations as an example of courage, kindness, and the transformative power of love. And somewhere, in ways large and small, their example continued, inspiring others to act with kindness, to help those in need, and to believe that no matter how dark life seems, there is always the possibility of a second chance.